Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, she's a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot who has transitioned into the world of speaking. She's one of the most sought-after speakers on the planet. Her incredible journey, next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, at one point I was out on the circuit giving 300 speeches a year in addition to my TV job at Fox 4, and so I got to meet some top-notch speakers, and I include my next guest as one of those people that I kept bumping into at different events. Elizabeth McCormick is in the studio. She's a keynote speaker. She's a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and she's my friend. Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to finally be here, right? We've known each other a long time.
We have known each other a long time, and I've had a chance to kind of watch your career soar, pun intended. Let's start at the beginning. So a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. This is definitely a woman in a man's world. What was that like? What year did you become a Black Hawk helicopter pilot?
I went through flight school in 1994.
Wow.
So a few years ago.
And when you were telling everybody, this is my dream, this is what I want to do, did you have a lot of naysayers?
Yeah, nobody believed me. So nobody. My parents were like, sure, go ahead. And, but I just, the recruiter said, you can't do this. The flight doctor was like, little girl. It's just all the way through, no one else believed. And I just really had a vision of myself doing that. Yes. And I knew I could do it.
Did you feel a lot of pressure? I mean, did you feel like you were a trailblazer and others were like seeing if you would, sink or swim?
Yeah, I didn't in the moment. In the moment, you're just present in the moment, right? So I didn't feel the pressure or being one of the, back at the time when less than 1% of all the pilots were women. Wow. So we're talking like 200 pilots. There was one woman for the Army. And I didn't even know any of that. I didn't know that there were all these barriers and there was a glass ceiling and that it was going to be hard. I just really stayed focused on the things I could control and controlled the controllables.
What were some of the life lessons that you learned during your career as a pilot that you now give to audiences?
So one of the things I'm famous for when I do a speech is I teach the audience how to fly a helicopter.
Oh, cool.
Because most people have not done that. No. So right hand, left hand, feet, get the whole room leaning together in a rapport building shared experience.
Love it.
Where they then, it has the cool factor, but it's also about that multitasking mode we do in business.
Nice.
Where we're, constantly, the phone is ringing, the emails are dinging, the text messages are blinging now at a faster pace than ever before. So how can we better handle ourselves and fly in those situations?
I love it. You have a beautiful website, and you just told me before the show that you're remaking it. So we'll put your website up on the screen, and as we scroll down, talk about the kinds of audiences you like to speak to.
Yeah, so I started off just with empowerment and motivation. And then from there, it went into leadership, and I've developed more leadership content. And then I went from there, sales. Mm-hmm. And then lately, I've been asked to speak for a lot of safety events. And I talk about being present and being focused and precise in what you do for those.
Well, and I know there's a lot of leadership speakers out there, a lot of sales speakers out there, but few have your background. I have to imagine that one of the reasons you're booked is your stories are just so vivid.
Oh, they're definitely not boring. So when they book me, I'm like, they're like, well, we know you're not boring. Like, you never quite know what you're going to get in a good way. So I keep the audience, male-dominated audience attention, the female audience attention. I have this large repertoire of customization points that I can do to make it all about their audience. Because ultimately, my stories are just the modality to get to the action and the change and what the audiences and the the boss, right? The CEO, the executive, what they need in their organization.
And you were telling me your largest audience is 6,000? That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a lot of people.
That's so cool.
I wasn't as nervous. I thought I would be more nervous. I wasn't as nervous as I thought I would be, but it was a great experience to be in an arena speaking with people.
Well, you created a new sizzle reel about a year ago, and I'm a huge fan. I can't roll the whole thing, but let's go ahead and run a clip from it.
When you fly, others will want to follow. When you fly, others will want to be a part of what you do and who you are. And when you fly, you will soar.
Our keynote presenter was named one of the top 30 motivational speakers in the world. She's currently number 5 on the list of leadership experts to follow online. She is the best-selling author of 19 published books on entrepreneurship and leadership topics and speaks for more than 100 corporations and associations each and every year. Elizabeth McCormick was awarded the U.S. Congressional Veteran Commendation as one of the first 100 women to fly the Black Hawk helicopter for the U.S. Army. She is here today to teach us how to fly.
So, strap into your seats. It is our pleasure to introduce Elizabeth McCormick.
Have you had those moments in your career, your life, where you're at the right place at the right time, doing the right things, helping the right people, patients? If your boss is in the room, please say yes. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Where you just know everything feels right and you are doing those right things. And I got out of the car and I walked down a ditch, through knee-high grass, up an embankment, and I got to the chain link fence that were protecting the helicopters, and I poked my fingers through and looked at the helicopters for the very first time. And I went, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I didn't know it was hard. I didn't know the Army had only let women into aviation about 15 years before that. And the Army, in all their cautiousness and prudence, they were only letting women in one at a time. One at a time, you know, to see how it worked out. I didn't know that. I just knew that it felt right. See, I didn't have to know how I was going to become a helicopter pilot to believe I was going to become a helicopter pilot. You see, we believe in ourselves, our abilities, our potential first. We figure out the how along the way. But what happens is when you don't have the belief in what is possible, opportunities will pass you by.
Elizabeth, I got chills. That's amazing. What's the highest compliment you've ever received?
So it is a huge compliment when I receive those messages, the Facebook message, the LinkedIn message, months and months, a year later, that I still think about one of the key things you say. I still remind myself to fly, first lead yourself. I still, one of the key messages I give is that practice makes, everybody says perfect. I shift the paradigm to permanent. What we do every day matters, and to stay present and focused in that. And so they, you know, I'll get the messages like, I'm still, you know, making permanence here, you know?
That's awesome.
And so having that kind of long-lasting impact just really helps drive me.
Yeah, and you've been speaking for 15 years, so I imagine that you're getting invited back again to speak to a whole new audience at the same association?
Yeah, so the Central California Women's Conference had me 3 times. And
Awesome.
The third time they asked me, I'm like, you know, I don't have a new speech, right? It's the same speech. And they're like, yeah, but we have new people in the audience.
Yes, that's it. I love it.
And people are in a different place. And and they're like, and we think you probably got better.
Yes. And you wrote a best-selling book a few years ago, The Pilot Method, and we're going to put it up on the screen. It's a beautiful cover. Elizabeth, tell us about the Pilot Method, because that's actually an acronym.
It is. It is. P is for potential, believing in yourself and your abilities and your potential and the potential of others. I is implementation. It doesn't do any good to have potential if you don't do something with it. So it's about taking action. L is a simple acronym for leadership. So it's communicate, aviate, navigate, and it goes deeper into each of those 3 pillars, I call them. And O is optimal performance. How do you perform when things are tough, right? How do you show up as your best self? And T is tenacity, like having a little stick to it.
Yes, I love that. And you certainly had to have that in your military career. Let's talk about you've been on the news all over the place here in the last month or so, and I know that we're a PR firm, and so we get requests all the time, and there were very specific requests. I need a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And I said, you know what, I just happen to have one. So we're going to show some video of you on CNN, and I think you were telling me this is how many appearances on CNN just in the last month?
I've been on CNN 9 times.
Oh my goodness.
And done over 60 interviews in the last.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And as we're watching this clip, just tell us, what does it feel like to be that most sought after expert when it comes to, aviation crashes like this?
I honestly, the hardest part was not to smile because I'm a happy person.
Yeah.
And this is a serious topic.
Yes.
So for me, the internal struggle was like, don't smile, don't smile, don't smile. Right. Because this is a really tragic accident and serious thing. So, some people would feel the pressure of that. For me, I felt the pressure of getting the story right.
Yes.
Because I was hearing other aviation experts on different networks not talking correctly. They didn't understand helicopters. They didn't understand military aviation. And so for me, the mission.
Yes.
And it kind of brought that warrior out in me.
Yes.
Like, let's fix this. Let's make sure people understand how this could happen.
And why don't we, the full investigation probably won't be complete for another year or something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So what have we learned? What are the lessons learned?
I've now broken it down into 10. But the biggest thing is in that first 24 hours is I couldn't have gone through 10, right? It would have lost people. So I focused on 3, and the 3 that were all fact-based, not speculation. Right? We knew there was a crew of 3, not 4. So that's a policy that allows them to fly with a minimal crew. And now we know there's other policies that were also impacting that.
Yes.
And then the second one was altitude. We knew they were too high, but we didn't know why. So that's still a big question mark. We're now finding out there was an equipment issue. And then the third one, it was air traffic control and the communication. The communication wasn't clear. There were 3 aircraft in the Black Hawk's visibility and sight line, and the air traffic control only said, do you have the CRJ? Not do you have 3, one at your 2 o'clock, one at your 11 o'clock high descending, one at your, so it was, and air traffic control, there's other things air traffic control also could have done as their collision alert was going off and said, Black Hawk hold.
Yes.
And the Black Hawk could have stopped.
Yes.
So there was a lot of other things that could have prevented that from happening.
So sad. Well, thank you for sharing your gifts with the world. And about the last minute or so, why don't you look into the camera on the left and talk to that CEO or that association executive who really wants a powerful keynote speaker.
Yeah. People are struggling right now. People are tired. They're coming out of the pandemic with a lower level of internal fortitude and motivation. And one of the things that I do is help them get really present and focused as to who they are and who they want to be and how they want to show up on a day-to-day basis. And I teach them how to fly a helicopter, but also fly means to first lead yourself so that they can better lead in your organization and they can better lead in their lives.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to end with her website, which is yourinspirationalspeaker.com. The great Elizabeth McCormick. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.